Okay. Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So today I'm doing another live chat, and this is actually my first live chat of 2019, which is kind of exciting because I've been trying to decide when to actually start this up again, and who's going to be the guests and all that stuff. And it just so happened that Patrick Hickey Jr. reached out to me on Facebook and said, "Hey, I'd be willing to do another chat." And I'm like, "Hey, that'd be cool. You can do a kind of like a follow up." So I talked to Patrick Hickey Jr. about a year ago, I believe, and it was around the time, maybe it was just before the launch of his book, The Minds Behind the Games, and we were kind of talking about that. We were also talking about a video game he was involved in, and so now it's been a full year and a lot has changed. So also, I'm going to be trying to monitor the chat this time. We got the chat going on here. And we'd like to have you guys kind of interact and throw some questions in there too. So anyways, let's welcome Patrick Hickey Jr. to the show.
Hello, Brian. Nice to meet you again. How you doing?
In his video game voice.
What's up? How you doing? Happy to be back on the show.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So there's a few things I'd like to, the first interview we did together was kind of like an introductory type of thing. We talked about who you were, what you've done in the past, favorite games, and all that stuff. So let's not talk about that anymore. Let's kind of talk about what you've been doing since the launch of your book. And I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff there. And I've been following you on Twitter. I've been following you on Facebook and everything else. And I've been seeing all these awesome pictures of you with these game developers and stuff like that. You're going to conventions. So the first thing I want to throw up here is, now, you're a family man, and I'm a family man. A lot of us, I'm sure, in the chat are also family men. How do you keep up with the work-life balance? Do you have any, tricks? Because I see you're running off the shows. You got a book. You got book signings. You're doing everything. And so, and your wife is also an entrepreneur as well. So What do you do? Like, how do you do this?
So we found the secret to entrepreneurial success. We've actually kidnapped about 5 or 6 different people, and they have different tasks to do, like clean the house and cook and take care of the baby and all of these things. So that works out really well for us. So this way we could be selfish in our entrepreneurial endeavors. No, I wish. Oh, I wish. I don't sleep a lot, Brian. I probably sleep about 4 or 5 hours a day. I'm up at about 4:45 in the morning. I don't get to bed until about 12 or 1. I'm constantly networking. I'm constantly rocking social media. I'm constantly writing. I mean, my first class that I teach is at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm at work around 5:45, 6 o'clock in the morning, writing, grading papers. I never take any work home with me. And my daughter, today was my day off. I'm off on Wednesday, and my daughter was up at 7:15, and my wife and I get up at the same time every single day, so it's like neither one of us take a day off. I hate when people are kind of like, "Oh, I need a day off." What do you need a day off from? You're not going to do anything. You're going to put yourself behind, so it's like a lot has changed over the last year. My daughter got a year older. She's talking. She knows the names of several Pokemon now. She's awesome.
I do see a lot of pictures of her with retro game stuff, which is cool.
Yeah, she just she sits in my man cave with me, and we just chill out. Funny side story, man. 3 days ago, she stole Spy Hunter on Game Boy Advance. And I knew she took it, and I didn't know where she put it in the living room. And I'm like, "Josie, where's the game?" And she's just like, "I don't know." And I'm just like, "Oh." So it's like we went out. We went for lunch, and we were walking around. And the whole entire time that we're out, I'm like, "Where the hell did this little girl put this game?" So then finally I go back upstairs and I look, and I have a fan that is ironically the same color as a Game Boy Advance cart, and she put it inside the fan. So it was that's kind of what my life has been like for the past year, trying to find that exact place where I need to be in order to find what I've been looking for. And what I've been looking for is to try and educate people as much as possible about video game history, but to do it in as charismatic and fun a way. There's so many video game books that are out that are mainly reference books, which is essentially a nice way of saying it's someone's opinion. So like there are definitely like books that don't fall into that category. So like anything by like Brett Weiss or like Leonard Herman or Ken Horowitz doesn't fall into that category. It's not their opinion. It's finely researched and stuff like that. But then you've got a lot of people that are, you know, internet celebrities and whatnot, and it's just big books that are their opinion. And this book, The Minds Behind the Games, Interviews with Cult and Classic Video Game Developers, it's an interview anthology. There's nothing in there that's my opinion. It's each chapter is the developer telling the story of their game. So, and the cool thing is, like, when this book came out, I felt great. I felt like it was the best thing that I had ever done. But then I had like this kind of like hole in my chest. And like everyone was kind of like happy for me, and they're like, "Oh, the book came out, blah, blah, blah." And I just said to myself, everything that I did in this book, it's all there. Like all the quotes that I got, it's all in there. Like I didn't leave anything out. There's no like juicy secrets that like only I know now. Like I put everything into this book. So now I'm saying to myself, so what's the difference between me and my reader? Nothing. They knew everything that I knew. So I said to myself, the only way that I can continue this journey to try and be like one of these persons that's trying to get to the bottom of video game history is to go out and do more interviews. So pretty much as soon as the first book came out, I was like, all right, let's go. Let's get back at this. And by August, I had 43 I had 43 new games. So the first book has 36 games. So the second book was going to have 43.
That's the good thing about video games, eh? There's enough of them out there.
I mean, for the rest of your life, if you wanted to, you know, it's beautiful. You know,
exactly, and that's a great idea actually to want to come up with a series like to like say, okay, well, this was the first book, and now we can branch out and. Yeah, like I know you were talking about like doing adventure games and like I don't know, maybe even sports games, or I mean, there's so many different categories of games.
Yeah, so like I mean, I'll explain it to you right now. So like what ended up happening was I went to my publisher and I'm like, let's do a sequel, and they're like, what's your idea? And I told them I got 43 games, and they're like, that's great that you've done all of this work already, but like you're not gonna like we don't want you to do a sequel of just like 43 games. And I'm like, what? And they're like, do an adventure game book, do a sports game book, do a shooter game book. And I'm just like, oh, wow. That's actually like a really good idea. So right now, I'm about 5 weeks away from being completely finished with an adventure edition of The Minds Behind the Games. By October, I'll be finished with a sports edition. And then slowly but surely, I'm working on a shooter edition. And I'd love to do an indie game book one day. I'd love to do a women in gaming book one day. So it's like,
oh yeah,
I can do this for like the rest of my life. And
there's so many different topics and categories, and
absolutely. So like, it's been wild, man. The past year has been nuts.
Even just like I'm noticing there in the chat, Arena Foot's talking about the 2600 homebrew. I mean, that there is a full industry of stuff. I mean, it's just limitless, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing about the video game industry. I'm just answering some of these people's questions and stuff like that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, again, there could totally be a freaking a homebrew book one time. You know, I love Arena Foot. You're awesome. You're plugging your book on my podcast. You're a gem. I do the same exact thing. So
that's exactly what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah, So and he's keep going, man. All three of his books are like game manuals made into a book. Fantastic. That's awesome, Arena Foot. So yeah, what was your question?
Well, I was actually gonna say, if anybody out there is in the chat, please feel free to throw some questions out there. But what I was gonna say is, for your books, you're also reaching out to other people and looking for suggestions. Like I think I saw that, well, at least once or twice on Facebook or Twitter, you were reaching out to people, asking what games that, So is that like a good tactic? Is that actually working out for you?
Yeah, I mean, it worked out twice for me. So the thing is with the adventure game book, I love adventure games, but truth be told, like I'm mainly like a sports gamer and RPG guy. Those are like my two favorite genres. So I feel like journalism is incredibly selfless. So if you're going to tell other people's stories, you've got to get your readers involved. You've got to activate your community, so to speak. So I said, are there any adventure games that you guys would like to know the behind the scenes stories to? And Douglas Coleman answered me, and I was on one of his podcasts like a year ago, and he said, yeah, Croc. So I looked out for the developer. I found the developer, and that worked out great. And then the next one was I had Shane Stein reach out to me, and he said he wanted Zill in the book. And it's very rare that like a game comes out and I don't know like what it is. And I'm like Zill. What the hell is Zill? It sounds like a disease, you know. Like, oh, Brian, I'm really sorry that like your great aunt like Hester got Zill. The doctors don't know what to do. Blah blah blah. But I do the research on the game, and I'm just like, oh, this is like a really nifty, adventure RPG that came out in 1980 something, like 1984 on the IBM Junior. So I end up like hunting all over Facebook and LinkedIn and Google, and I end up finding a forum post on like the 10th page of like a Google search where one of the creators commented that he made the game. So then I reached out to him, and then I found the other developer on LinkedIn, and we ended up doing an interview, and it came out really good. So now this guy that bought my first book, Shane Stein, awesome guy from Texas, he got a game that he loved as a kid into one of my books. So then what I ended up doing was, I said, Shane, tell me why this game is special to you. And he gave me an awesome quote. So we put that in the chapter too. So that's the kind of relationship that I want to have with my readers. I don't want these books to be super insular. Like when I write them, I'm really like by myself. I can't have somebody over my shoulder like giving me a pep talk and stuff like that. But like when I'm on Facebook and I'm talking about them, I want as many people to be involved as possible. So to have Shane and Douglas like play a role in that is really awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of like it makes your book a little bit different because like most of the books that I've seen are more like they're playthrough books, or they just have pictures of the games and ratings out of 10 or something. Like you said earlier, I mean, it's more opinion based. It's more like, like Pat the NES Punk, for instance, makes his own books and stuff, and I'm sure they're very good. But I mean, it's a lot of it's probably just their thoughts and their opinions, and so this is actually pretty cool that you've gone and reached out to the designers, developers. And so how is that process? Like, is that hard to do? Like, are you finding it challenging to reach out to these people? Like, because I know you've even reached out, to some of the bigger players, like, Howard Scott Warshaw for Atari, people like them who have these busy lifestyles. And do you find that challenging to, throw them out a line and say, hey, I'm making a book? Like, do they not receive this type of stuff all the time?
Well, see, this is the thing too. Like, it helps also that I teach journalism at the college level. I was an editor at NBC. I've run my own site for about 10 years. I've written for publications, magazines, and websites for about 15 years. So it's like, I'm used to people saying no. I'm used to people saying, like, go find a home, like, go somewhere and get away from me. And for the first book, I have 36 games, but I probably pitched about 100. And I probably got answers for about 40, 41. So I put in the best, like, 100,000 words that I could into the first book. And the thing is, like, I'm fully comfortable walking over to just pretty much anyone and telling them what I'm doing and that I'd like them to be involved. If they don't want to be, then that's absolutely fine. I think what saves me, what my saving grace is at the end of the day, despite the fact that I'm a huge pain in the ass and I'm sarcastic, is that people see the passion that I have. People see the attention to detail that I have. They see that, like, I get involved in this and that I really want to tell their story because I feel like that they deserve it. So, like, Howard Scott Warshaw, for example, I mean, I've interviewed him about all 3 of his games on the Atari 2600. So for him to be able to, like, share all of that with me, I mean, that's, like, probably one of the crowning achievements in as far as, like, my video game stuff goes. Like, I've done a lot of music and a lot of sports journalism and stuff, but, like, to have this guy, like, talk to me and tell me all the things that he did wrong as well as the things that he did right, super important to me.
Yeah.
To have David Crane speak to me about like Boy and His Blob, Pitfall, Night Trap. I mean, again, they saw that like I wanted to do this not to because I don't want to be a YouTube personality. I don't want to be an Instagram star. I'm a college professor that makes a comfortable living, but I love to write. I've written every day since I'm 18 years old. I've written for like the Daily News. I've had stuff published in the New York Times, NBC, and like these books are like super, super important to me because I'm telling the stories that need to be told, and I don't want my kid and I don't want my nephews to think that E.T. is the worst game of all time because fucking Wikipedia says it. You know? So it's like writing these books is like a process that is incredibly difficult. Like it takes so much time, but it's like I do it because I want more people to know what's going on, to know that like video game creation is an art within itself, and that just as much time, effort, love, passion goes into making a video game as does writing a book, making a movie, making an album, writing a poem, painting something. It's art, and for far too long it's been considered kid stuff. And it's just like even in my situation, I'm the assistant director of the journalism program at Kingsborough Community College. I have a master's degree in journalism. When I wrote this book, a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's not academic, it's not scholarly." You know, to me, it's like the same people that said that about this book said the same thing about a book that focused on like the history of film in like 1920 when film was still like coming into its own. So I am fully aware of the fact that I have written a book that won't be appreciated for like another 20, 25 years. Because what's going to happen, sadly, and I even like cringe at the thought of this, like 20, 25 years from now, Howard Scott Warshaw, David Crane, Gary Kitchen, all these amazing video game developers, maybe even myself, won't be here anymore. Mm-hmm. So if their stories don't get told now, then nobody knows them. And that would be the worst thing in the world, that people wouldn't know that like David Crane and Gary Kitchen worked 20 hours a day for 6 weeks to make Boy and His Blob. You know, like that's what kids playing Fortnite need to know about video game creation. That's what goes into it. You know? So
yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like if you look at today, like say something like Nintendo Switch or any of the new systems that come out, and the amount of games that get released. And we're talking, and not just like the Switch or the consoles, but like cell phone games and, you know, all the games that are coming out. There's just tons of them. And but if you go back into the past, like obviously there was a more limited run. I mean, there was a lot of hurdles the developers had to go through. It wasn't just simply just push it out into some social platform or make it available for download, right? It had to go through the packaging, it had to go through the story, it had to go through the manual. Everything had to be done in order to get that game on the shelf. And so what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Like we got to capture these people now while they're here, while they remember it, while they want to share their story, because in 20, 30, 40 years, when these people are not there, it's going to be like a dig. Like you're going to have to go back and you're going to have to speak to people who might have known them. Yeah. And so, yeah, it makes sense that you want to archive this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And it's like just the reception so far. So like the book will be out for a year, like April 15th. And it's already in 58 colleges around the world, including NYU, Stanford, UCLA, USC. And I promise I didn't pay anybody to get the book in the library in any of those colleges. You know, it's in books in Canada. It's all over the place. 58 libraries, college libraries already. So it's like, it's nuts.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I want. I want some guy or some gal, you know, or some goat, whatever you are, to go into a library and be like, you know what, I want to know more about these games and to really find out the passion behind them. So yeah.
Not only that, it opens it up for the younger generation to learn about these things. I mean, that's one of the things, you know, as us retro players, I mean, we're kind of like, we play these games and you got to wonder like how many, you know, people today even know half of them exist or existed. And, you know, when you start talking about saying, oh, I played Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, and the kid today saying, well, I play Cuphead. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a world of difference, right?
You know,
And
the thing is too, I don't think a lot of gamers that play video games now get like a lot of the things that I try and touch on in the first book and especially in the second book, because it's like you'll listen to a song and you'll go, wow, she kind of sounds like Madonna a little bit. Or, oh, you know what? She's got like a little bit of Cher in her voice. Or, you know what? Oh, those lyrics remind me a lot of Johnny Cash. When I play video games now, I say, holy crap, you know what? Oh, that reminds me of Karate Champ. Or, oh, you know what? That reminds me of like the original Metal Gear. Or, oh, you know what? That has some Akari Warriors in it and stuff like that. So I think that the more you learn about retro games and the more you find out about the games that build the community into what it is now, the more you appreciate the games that come out today.
exactly, yeah. You got and you know where they came from. You got to know the background. All this stuff was, you know, everything kind of comes from something else, right?
Absolutely.
And so,
unless you're playing like games like original games on the Atari 2600 or the Intellivision,
Yeah.
like
exactly.
those were the guys that said, you know what? Oh shit, you know what? I wonder if we could make a plane fly in a video game. You know, or I wonder what it would be like to you know have a character do this in a game. You know,
And this is also going back to what you said earlier about people having that misconception about ET, because yes, that is a big thing. That is, it's like it's a divide on the internet. You got these people like me who say it's not a bad game; it's actually a pretty cool game, and you got all these other people saying, yeah, it's crap. But what a lot of people don't understand is the story behind it. They don't understand how much time you had to program it. They didn't understand the limitations, how hard it was to program an Atari game. And also, there was nothing to refer back to. Today's developers can look back at thousands of games and get inspiration and say, you know what, I like The Legend of Zelda. I'm going to make a game like The Legend of Zelda. Howard didn't have that back then. There was no game based off a movie back then. He made one of the first ones, if not the first one.
And I discussed this a lot in the first book, but it's just like Atari set themselves up to fail in the beginning of that entire process. And yes, Pete, you're absolutely right. Reading the manual, if you read the manual for ET, you had a better idea of what was going on if you just jumped in. And it's like, it's ironic that Pete says that, because I mean, that's like the way that like we met. He messaged me one day and I knew exactly who he was. And the reason why I knew exactly who he was is because I'm the guy that reads instruction manuals for video games. So when I saw Pete Paquette had sent me a message because he wanted me to be on his podcast, I said, are you the Pete Paquette that worked on Gladius? And he was like, yeah, how do you know that? And I was like, because I'm that guy, you know? But to go back to, you know, ET, Atari spent like $28 million to get the ET license. So in order for that game to even like break even, it would have had to sell like 8 million copies. And up until that point, only one game had sold that many copies for the Atari 2600. And it was Pac-Man, which was, I don't want to say it's an awful game, but it's a different game than the arcade original. We have to say that.
Yeah, for sure.
And,
for sure.
Atari really hurt themselves because they had just ported so many games for so long that like they were headed in a downward spiral, and ET was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. But it wasn't ET's fault. If it wasn't ET, it would have been another game, you know.
Yeah.
So,
well, the whole industry. I mean, by what, late 82 was flooded with a lot of bad games.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one after another.
Yep.
And you had lots of weird companies like dog food companies making games, and Crest, I think, or what is it? The toothpaste company who made like tooth protectors. Like you had so many different companies throwing their hand in there, going, "Hey, we just make a game and then we make money," and that's where the crash came. It had nothing to do with ET. And so,
like, throughout like the history of video games, that's happened a lot of times. So, like, I just finished interviewing Nick Cusworth, who was the level designer and like the chief like visionary for Croc, and the company that ended up publishing Croc in Japan was like an energy company. They didn't even know like what they were doing. This was like one of their first video games that they got involved in, and what they ended up doing, which had a cool effect on Croc, was that they sent the creator of Bonk's Adventure to the team in London, and he helped them like work on the game and tighten it up. So it's like, even though this company was an energy company and they had nothing to do with the video game industry, they saw like what Croc was, which was a platform game, and they sent like one of the pioneers of 2D platforming games, like the Bonk series. I mean, come on, it's awesome. They sent him there to like to bounce ideas off of them. No pun intended. Well, see, Amazing Vector, like, let's talk about the control scheme really quick. So I'm not sure if you know this or not. I should probably not tell you this because it's in the next book that's not out yet. But they just DualShock controllers weren't even like a thing until like the last leg of the development cycle of Croc. So like the first like year and 10 months that game was in active development, the D-pad was still the thing on the Sony PlayStation. A lot of people forget that like DualShock controllers weren't created like when the PlayStation came out. So
yeah, it didn't come out in the first iteration of it.
So Croc came out at a weird time. Croc comes out when like 3D platformers are just starting to grow into something, and the advent of DualShock technology and analog control wasn't quite there yet. So they put it in at the end, but it wasn't nearly as fleshed out. So that's something that I'm going to talk about in that chapter of the second book.
Awesome. I want to go back to a question somebody asked earlier. I know,
and I was going to find out all about the Yoshi story in the chapter. I won't tell you now, but you'll find about all of it is in the chapter. You will love it. I promise you.
I was going to go back to somebody was asking if you talked to Ed Fries.
No, it's funny because it's like I get friend requests like the people you should know, and he comes up all the time, and I'm always like, maybe I should message him, you know? And it's just like, that's the cool thing about this book series. It's like, there's always going to be more people to speak to.
Yeah.
So I would love to speak to him at some point. But it's like, as far as like this book, the next book that I'm doing, the adventure book, I'm pretty much like done. Like, I don't want to add any more games to it. And then the sports book, I'm still actively looking for like maybe like 3 or 4 more games. But I mean, I could talk to him at some point, you know? So
was there anybody out of all the people you talked to that really kind of blew you away? Like, I'm actually talking, like, you know, you geeked out or anything like that, or you
well, just... it's like every time I talk to Howard Scott Warshaw, it's like one of those experiences because he's like he's one of the smartest people that I've ever met. So like just being able to pick his brain is always awesome. And the thing is too, many of the developers that I speak to are excellent developers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to tell a great story. So like I'll have to ask a lot of follow-up questions and stuff like that, which is fine because it's my job to like compile like the history and then tell their story. But then every once in a while I get somebody that is just like a naturally gifted storyteller. I would say like for the first book it was definitely Howard Scott Warshaw and David Crane. For the second book, it has to be Tony Barnes. Nobody even knows who Tony Barnes is. If you know who Tony Barnes is, write it in the comments, and then like you'll be awesome. Like Tony Barnes is one of these guys that's worked in the video game industry for 35 years, and nobody knows like what he's done. And he's been everywhere. He's been to EA. He's been to Rockstar. He's been Capcom. He's been all over the place, and like he just kind of tells it like it is. He's a super awesome, down-to-earth guy that tells shit how it is. And for the second book, I have him right now for Strider for PlayStation 3, 4, Xbox 360, Xbox One. So he was the lead designer on the last Strider game, which I love that game. And also for Buffy the Vampire Slayer on Xbox, which is an awesome game that just like so many things happen during that development cycle. And once you read that chapter, you'll appreciate the game even more. So that's kind of been the guy so far. Also, Mark Flipman has been awesome. I spoke to him. He was the producer on Maximum Carnage on Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Oh, loved Maximum Carnage. And he was at Acclaim when Acclaim was just pumping out all these really cool games like the WWF Royal Rumble game, like I said, Maximum Carnage, Simpsons games, like games that like you went to the video store and rented. So like being able to speak to him was a lot of fun too. Like a lot of these guys, man, like I show up on Facebook and they'll message me and they'll be like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm just like, "Oh my god!" Like they're messaging me like I'm their friend and stuff. And that's the thing. Though, I think now like I'm in a position where they trust my opinion and I trust theirs. So like I've ended up with like a whole bunch of like confidants in a way. Like I can ask them questions about things, and especially now because like I told you in the last time that we spoke, I've been doing some voice acting and some story editing for some video games, and being able to bounce ideas off of these legends has been awesome. And then them telling me their stories, I feel like that makes me an asset when I do my work in the video game industry. So
yeah, the first game that you did, what was that called again? It was
it's called The Padre.
The Padre, that's right.
And
yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on with The Padre right now that I can't quite discuss. But you haven't heard the last of it yet. It's on Steam right now. But there's a lot of news coming out. So like in the next like month or so, you're gonna be like, oh, that's what he couldn't tell us. Oh, okay. So like I was a story editor on that game, and I was the lead voice actor.
The voice actor, yeah.
So
doing your,
and that's a wild story. I mean, if you want me to tell you the story how I got involved, I could. It's just it's a freaking wild story.
Now, Stu's Reviews was asking earlier, what did he say about LJN? I guess that was who you were just referring to.
Mark Flipman. Well, no. I mean, that's the thing. Like LJN, after a while, they became like a subsidiary of Acclaim. So he didn't work for LJN. He worked for Acclaim. He was on the black team for Acclaim. Mark Flipman. So, could I call up Howard Scott Warshaw and say, dude, I'm at the bar down the street. Come meet me in 15 minutes. Well, he's in LA, and I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and I've never had a drink in my entire life. So
that's kind of a far distance.
Yeah. So I wouldn't take the plane just for the flight, just for the beer, because I wouldn't drink the beer anyway. So, but he's a really cool guy, and like I said, he's let me pick his brain for several hours and over 100 emails. So I really appreciate all the time and energy that he put into the answers.
Yeah, and he's not really into the video game world per se anymore, right? Like he's started a new thing and a while back, I think. And
yeah, he's in therapy now. Like he's a psychotherapist, and he's amazing at what he does. So he's got, and that's the thing too. You make 3 games, and all 3 sell over 1 million copies. What else is there to do? Yeah, he made a film. Also, he's done a whole bunch of things. He's written like books about academia and stuff like that.
He was even in the Angry Video Game Nerds movie.
Yeah, yep. So that's the thing, though, too. I think real success is you understanding like your worth, you know. And Howard knows that he's made arguably one of the greatest games in Atari 2600 history in Yar's Revenge, and he's made one of the not so good games in E.T. And then also Indiana Jones, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, is an awesome game in its own right, considering what it was. And
frankly, I like E.T. better than the Raiders game because I don't like how you have to use the 2 controllers, and it just seems a lot more cryptic to me.
It's like, no, you're absolutely right. Like technology-wise, it's. But that's the thing, though, too. He likes to be polarizing. He likes to do things differently than other people. So there's not a lot of people that can say, you know what, I'm going to do it different because no one else has done it this way. Like you can get yourself in a lot of trouble that way. You have to be really intelligent and super crafty to be able to like make your mark doing that, and that's exactly what Howard Scott Warshaw.
Yeah, absolutely. He could have taken, and I've said this before, he could have taken the easy route and made like a E.T. into a Pac-Man clone, or a Space Invader clone, or something. I mean, space right there, E.T. He could have just had E.T. coming down and things. I mean, he could have taken in so many different directions. And he said, no, I'm going to do this different. I'm going to create multiple maps. And so he did something that I don't think a lot of Atari creators would have done at the time. There wasn't a lot of games like that. Like Superman was one. Like multiple screens like that to actually like create a world. Adventure was another one. And but there's not a lot of them. Like a lot of the games are single screen, and they're based off of an arcade port.
Well, see, that's the thing, too. Like, when you guys pick up the second book, like, there's a big story in the Raiders of the Lost Ark chapter where Howard Scott Warshaw says, like, he was just so affected by adventure. Where he just saw adventure as something, like, really freaking cool and really different. And he wanted to make, like, his own, like, version of adventure without using any of the gameplay techniques in adventure. So it's like, make your own type of adventure without using any of the things that made adventure good. I mean, that's difficult. That's like if you listen to a song and go, you know what, that song really had a crazy effect on me, so I'm going to write my own like homage to that and not use any of the same notes at all. Like that's crazy, but that's the type of person he is. So,
so I just want to throw it out there too, because I know somebody brought this up earlier. I'm going to be putting links after the video is done. It's published on YouTube. I'm going to get some links off of Patrick to put down there
too, if you want, if it makes things easier for you.
Yeah, like I'll get like the links to the books on Amazon or wherever on Facebook and stuff. So that'll all end up on the video at the end. After it's done, I'll put it up there. So look out for that when we're done. But let's move on to something else. I just wanted to talk about doing the whole, I'm an author now, and I'm going to start signing books and going to schools and all that. What has that been like to you? I mean, I still remember seeing some of your posts probably about a year ago. And you were like, I'm doing a book signing here, and I saw my name now and it has author before it, and this is real. This is coming true. And like how does that, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like how has this changed you in that sense that you're like now?
I mean, I don't know if it's changed me. It's like I feel like if you know me, I've always been kind of like this really like high energy, gregarious, like somewhat sarcastic, off the wall like type of guy that like I'm the type of person where it's like I'm a journalist. So it's like I sit down with a bunch of people and we're like, all right, we're gonna do this, and we only have until like 8 o'clock to do this. And if we don't do it by 8 o'clock, it's never gonna get done and we won't do it ever again. So to go from that to academia is very hard, because in academia it's like, let's have a meeting to plan a meeting for a meeting that we're going to have later. And it's like, I don't work like that, So when I finally decided that I was going to write a book, I just put everything that I had into it. I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew that I was going to have to market myself. I knew that I was going to have to do everything that I possibly could to get it to as many people as possible. And I was looking forward to that. Like, I've gone to several book signings before, and I'm not going to say who. I should, but I'm not going to say who. But it's like I got a dead hand, and I didn't even get eye contact. If you come to one of my book signings, I will not only make eye contact with you, but I will shake your hand, and I will want to have a conversation with you, and I want to talk for a little while, And I'll write something nice in your book and something different. If I sign 40 books in one day, they'll all have something different in them, Yeah.
So that's good. I mean, that's perfect, because that's the interaction. That's the whole point, in my opinion, of actually going to get a book signed.
Absolutely.
To just actually sit there and have that 2 seconds to say something. Obviously it's going to depend on the crowds, the lineups, and all other stuff, on how much time you're going to have to give people. But at least having that option, and not just, so here's my signature, next, and that's it. I mean, that's great that people. I mean, I haven't been to a whole lot of book signings. I mean, probably the one I remember the most was J.K. Rowling's, where I got one of the Harry Potter books signed, and it really wasn't. I mean, it was part of my job, actually. It was where I was working at the time, and so it was. It wasn't me there as a fan, but she still actually did communicate a little bit with, even though there was a lot of us there.
Yeah,
and I thought that was cool, that she actually said something. It wasn't just like, stand in line, sign, move to the next, and Absolutely. So that's actually pretty cool.
And just, I mean, to take it a step further, it's like when someone orders the book from my site, from patrickhickeyjr.com, there's a little tab that says the minds behind the games, and if you click that, you scroll down, you can buy it. Like if you have PayPal or credit card, you can buy it straight from there. But what happens is I get an email, and I have the person's address, their email address, and stuff like that. So what I'll do is I'll email them right away, and I'll thank them for buying the book. And when I have their address, I know where they live and stuff like that. So if I have somebody from like Philadelphia, I'll message them, and I'm like, are you a Phillies fan? Are you a Flyers fan? Like, are you an Eagles fan? And if they tell me that they're into like a certain team or something, I'll go into like my man cave and I'll pick out like a couple of baseball cards from like the 80s or the 90s, whatever, and I'll sneak them in the book. Or like if they tell me, oh, I can't wait to read the wrestling chapter, then I know they're a wrestling fan, so maybe I'll put something in there that's like like wrestling related. So it's like I want to have a cool relationship. with my readers. Stu, Warren Spector is actually in both of the books. Warren Spector is an awesome man. I interviewed him when I was at NBC, and I got the whole story for Deus Ex and the story for Epic Mickey. So yeah, if you're a big Warren Spector fan, amazing man. Gave me 2 great interviews for the first 2 books. So, but that's the thing too. It's like I've learned so much from these guys, speaking to these guys. That, like, perfect example, man. I mean, why would Warren Spector want to speak to me? He has no reason to. He's like one of the greatest video game developers of all time. But he took the time out, and he told me some amazing stories about 2 games that were incredibly important to him. So the only way for me to, like, do that kind courtesy justice is to be the same exact way with every person that buys one of my books, or somebody that's interested in reading or buying one of my books. You know, if you steal from the library, I'll treat you the same way you did if you bought it.
That's always the most respectable, I think, is no matter how big someone gets, to still be a human and still communicate with people and not act like they are above you. Or, I mean, and that can just ruin the experience. And it's kind of like with actors, right? You think that these actors are probably all these great people, but then you might actually meet one and find out he's really a jerk or something. Like, and it kind of just throws your perception of all this work out the window, right?
It's funny too, because when I was talking to Howard Scott Warshaw about Raiders of the Lost Ark, he says to me, like, well, you know, the first book's out, is you know, it looks like it's doing well. Like, how have things changed? I'm like, I still take the bus to work every day. I'm like, I still got holes in my socks. I'm like, but things are good, you know. So I mean, that's rich. I mean, one book that sells moderately well, especially your first book, isn't going to. It's not going to change your life. My whole hope is that, like, I can do like 10 of these books, you know, and then, like, one day I want to write a book on professional wrestling. I want to write a book about hockey, and through all of those royalties, that I can, like, have a nice house in Florida somewhere, and I can be in my 70s playing video game somewhere, you know. So, I mean,
I've talked to a lot of I've talked to a lot of authors before, and all of them told me the same thing. You're not going to get rich writing books, and you know, it's just the same thing with, you know, even just being like me being a YouTuber. I've talked to a lot of YouTubers, bigger YouTubers, like way bigger than me, and you know, a lot of them will say the same thing. You're not going to get rich doing this. This is not. Don't get into this for the money. Get into this for the passion.
Absolutely.
And I think that's exactly what you're doing with your books.
And I go into video game stores in my neighborhood, and I see that, like, the owner has, like, my book behind the counter. I'm just like, wow, you know, like, that's really cool. And, like, when I jump into, like, a video game conversation in the store, and people are like, oh, how do you know that? And I just go, that book over there, that's me. And they're like, oh my God,
I wrote that.
You know, and it's just like, yeah, you know, I was in a GameStop like 6 months ago, and this kid was just selling, like, must have been like 60, 70 games for, like, the Wii and, like, for the PS4. And I'm just like, you're really going to regret that, kid. And he's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm like, you're going to regret that when you are 30. Those games are huge, huge influences on you as a person, and you don't even know it yet. I'm like, keep them. Keep them. And he's like, no, I don't want them, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, okay. And his mother's
make his mistakes.
Yeah, but his mother's like, oh, you know, what makes you say that, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, I have over 3,000 games. I'm like, I haven't gotten rid of a game since I was 14 years old. Since I've been old enough to work, I've kept every game that I've bought, and it drives my wife crazy sometimes. But I have a ton of games, you know, and oh my God, thank you, Stuart, for buying the book. Holy crap, Stu, you are awesome. I'm going to autograph the hell out of it.
Sweet.
But yeah, that's awesome, Stu. You're going to, like, make me cry. You don't make fat guys cry, like, on live YouTube. Like, it's crazy, you know?
Come on, man, this is live.
It's crazy because it's like when I'm in my man cave and I'm sitting in there with my daughter, and she'll just grab a random game. Like the other day, she picked up Seaman for the Dreamcast, and she pulled the mic out of the box and stuff like that, and she's like talking into the mic, and I'm just like, it took me back to, like, the first time I played the game and heard, like, Leonard Nimoy's voice, and I'm just like, this is insane, you know? So it's like every game that I own, I can look back and I could talk about, like, the the experience that I had playing it for the first time. And it's like, ironically, that's not so ironically, that's the way this book started. You know, I'm sitting in my man cave and I'm just like, I'm 33, my wife's pregnant. I need to do something that like helps me validate all of the hard work that I've done in journalism. And like the only thing that I know how to do reasonably well is write and report, because I was just sick of writing for places. And then, I mean, Examiner, I had hundreds of articles. I was the top rated writer on that site for months, you know, before they crashed. And then one day, all gone, you know? So I'm like, if I write a book, even if it goes out of print, I'm immortal, you know? Hopefully the book is good enough it gets in the Library of Congress and stuff like that, which The Minds Behind the Games is in the Library of Congress. And I was just sitting around in my man cave, and I just started picking out games. Toe Jam and Earl, you know, King's Bounty, Wonder Boy and Monsterland, all these games. And I'm just like, I need to tell the behind-the-scenes stories of these games. You know, so it's like my love of video games and my love of journalism combined to create like the thing that I'm the most proud of besides my wife and my daughter. So
yeah,
like,
it's nice and it's different. I think that's what the key was. It's different, right?
Yeah.
You know, you had your own spin on it, and it wasn't just a typical, you know, reference or whatever book that's been done hundreds of times. I actually remember them back in the day, back in the earlier Nintendo days, going into the bookstores and stuff and seeing tons of books on, you know, every Nintendo game published, and then you
really good. You know, but I mean,
Nintendo Power, the magazine was out, and you can get all the stuff in there. And so to see something like this, where you're actually getting into like the brains of the people who made it, is what makes this more fascinating. It's kind of like you know, kind of like what Tim Lapatino did with the art of Atari, where he dove into the art, and he did a you know, a great book where it's going into the art itself. And that's you know, again, that's a totally different thing than what people have done in the past.
Exactly.
So,
like, I feel like the thing that makes a book, a nonfiction book, stand out is selflessness. Because the thing is, I can easily, because I mean, I write incredibly quick. I could do a book that's like the best games ever for the Game Boy, and I could just make a list, and I could just bang out like 2,000 words on each game, and it could be this massive omnibus and stuff like that. But it's just my opinion. And I mean, at the end of the day, what does my opinion mean? Sitting down, though, and getting these people's stories, that's something that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. So, like, perfect example. Yesterday, I teach 2 classes. I'm done at like 11:30. So I go back to my office and I sit down for like a half an hour. And then I speak to Eddie Drombauer, who was one of the developers on Earl Weaver Baseball, which is Electronic Arts' first baseball game. We spoke for like an hour and a half, completely blew my mind. And I'm just like, I could play this game for an hour and a half and I could write something, but it would pale in comparison to like what this guy just told me. This guy just gave me a piece of his soul that I can share with the rest of like the world. And the people that really appreciate video games and love video games, they'll remember that story for the rest of their life just as much as they did the first time they played the game. That's what I want. I want you to get the book. You don't have to get the book. You can rent it out from the library or whatever you want to do. But like, look through the games, read about them, and then reconnect with them. You know? Yeah. So it's like after, because I mean, I've had to read this book 3 or 4 times, like before, you know, before it got published, and it just made me want to play Night Trap so much more. You know, it made me want to go back to E.T. It made me want to play Toe Jam and Earl more. NBA Jam is one of my favorite games of all time. You know, so it's like it made me go back to NBA Jam. So it's just like, that's what this experience is supposed to be like. It's supposed to be reconnecting with an old friend, but then learning things about that old friend that you never even thought were possible.
And I think a lot of people kind of relate to this too. You know, most people have fond memories of video games. It's not just simply, oh yeah, I just played that game and I was done. There's and a lot of it has to do with like your first experiences too. Like for me, people that know me know I'm an Intellivision guy. I played on the Intellivision when I was a kid, and I know a lot of people don't even know what that system is nowadays. And I played.
Did you have the voice adapter?
Yeah, the IntelliVoice module. Yeah, I got that later on.
Man, that's awesome. Okay,
but I played things like you know, Donkey Kong was my favorite. And even though it wasn't the greatest version, I was a kid. I didn't know better. I was excited to get that game. I got it for an Easter gift. And I was just like, you know, hell yeah. I ran downstairs, I plugged it in, and I played the heck out of that game. And it stayed special to me because of that moment. And even when I had to get rid of my Intellivision, which was hard when I was a kid,
Yeah.
And I got rid of all the games, I kept the cartridge. I kept the original Donkey Kong cartridge. I still have it today. And when I kept that, I had no idea that I'd be able to play it again.
Absolutely.
I thought, it's gone. You know, the Intellivision's gone out of my life. It's never coming back. But I'll have this little memento that I can hold on to and remember I always liked this game. And when I finally, you know, probably like 15 years later, picked up another Intellivision, the one I actually have now, I was excited that the Donkey Kong game actually worked. And I was, you know, even skeptical. I'm like, this is old.
They
I had this stuff.
Beaten, man.
Yeah. So just getting it to, you know, and that was the memories, that those are the things that stick with you. And everybody kind of has their own story, because I've talked to a lot of different people and they all have their game of, you know, I remember, even if it's Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, or, you know, Legend of Zelda or something like that. Everybody has their little story that they remember about a certain game. So it's great to see it preserved in this fashion.
Absolutely.
So there's a few little other things I was going to get to as well.
Sure.
I don't want this to go on all night, so we both probably have to go to bed. So there's things like Old School Gamer Magazine, which you hooked me up with Ryan Berger, and I ended up doing a live chat with him too. But I know you're still you're involved in that as well, right? Like you actually do write-ups on it and stuff. Like I've seen a few things.
Yeah, I would say I write about 5 to 7 articles a month for their website, and then the last 3 months I've been writing longer form like features for the magazine. So like the shooter book, the shooter edition of Minds Behind the Games, that's like the 3rd one coming. So that'll be like book 4 in the series. That's not going to be out probably until like 2020, 2021. So, but I did a interview of Gary Kitchen for a Turn and Burn No Fly Zone, which is like an F-14 simulator game, and it's awesome. And it's like he's worked on various forms of it. Dan Kitchen, not Gary Kitchen, I'm sorry. Dan Kitchen is his brother. Dan Kitchen did Turn and Burn. And Gary Kitchen did Super Battle Tank. And Keystone Capers, Brian, is actually featured in the 2nd book, too. You get to find out all about Keystone Capers, and you get to find out all about Gary Kitchen's Game Maker, too. So
I got some great memories of Keystone Capers as well.
For me, Keystone Capers has like the best jump ever. Like I feel like the character feels awesome. Like when
flies through the air.
Jumps, yeah, like it feels the way, but it's like so ahead of its time. But anyway, so like when my publisher told me not to do a massive sequel, to break it up into, you know, sections, and like the shooter was like the least far along, so I already done this great interview with Dan Kitchen. So I'm like, I didn't want it to sit on the shelf for like 2 years. So when I found out that Old School Gamer Magazine was doing the Sim edition, the simulation issue that actually just came out today, I pitched the Dan Kitchen interview, and I got a beautiful two-page spread in the magazine this month. So if you guys are interested in seeing like what the average chapter of the Minds Behind the Games looks like, check out this month's Old School Gamer Magazine, because that's basically what a finished chapter of the book looks like. Yeah, we should throw a link. Like I said, I want to put a bunch of links after the video we're done onto this video. That should be one of them. We should add that in there. Yeah, absolutely. Old School Gamer Magazine is really cool because like I've said before that like I'm really a fan of the work of Brett Weiss. Like he wrote the foreword to the first book, and I've contributed to his Super Nintendo omnibus. He writes for Old School Gamer Magazine, and then like Leonard Herman is like the king of like video game history. Like if you're gonna read a history book on video gaming, you want to read Phoenix. And he also writes for Old School Gamer. Michael Thomlinson, who does a lot of video game work too. He at one time had the Guinness World Record, like biggest video game collection, and he's written a ton of books. He runs GoodDealGames.com. He writes for Old School Gamer Magazine. So it's just like this really cool resource. When I got asked to write for Old School Gamer magazine, it was really cool because I got to work alongside all of these guys. Yeah, Stu, Phoenix 4, the 4 means it's the 4th edition of the book. So yeah.
And you also write for your own website, right? Review Fix?
Yeah, I've owned Review Fix since May of 2009. So like in like a month and a half, we're going to be turning 10. So
did you start that, or was that something?
Yes, I did. Yep, that's what happened. Was I had just got my bachelor's degree, like I would say, like a year before, and I was writing for local newspapers. And writing for local newspapers sucks when you first start out because they take forever to pay you, and you're just writing whatever they assign you. And I wasn't happy, and I was just ending a relationship, so I had a lot of time on my hands. So I'm like, you know what, I'm going to start an entertainment website. So I started reaching out to video game companies, and I'm like, send me your stuff so I can review it. And I was very lucky that like companies like Atlas and Tecmo and Deep Silver and EA at one point and all these other places, they started sending me games to review. And then we started doing music and then theater and food and this and that. So it's just comic books, tons of comic books still to this day. So it's just a really fun. It's a fun site. I have a lot of like really talented people that help me out, fellow professors, former students of mine, just pop culture aficionados that just write about the things that they love. So, yeah. So some people have like
still doing pretty well then, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, like again too, I pay my bills because I'm a full-time college professor. So like I don't need to write books to make money. I don't need to run a site. I do these things because they fill me up in a way that like no other thing can. And like I wouldn't be the person that I am if I didn't run this site for 10 years and if I didn't write this book.
Do you not make any money off of it though? Like, is there no revenues?
Oh, there's money.
Okay.
Yeah, there's absolutely money. But you know,
it's just not what you would live off of.
yeah. So it's like we'll put it this way, like at the end of the day, the site costs like X amount of money to run, and I absolutely positively make that back, and I make enough money after that to like that I can reinvest it in the site, and I could take care of like some odds and ends and stuff like that. But it wouldn't be enough. Yeah. It wouldn't be enough to like, you know, pay my bills for a couple of months. That's just not the case. So
yeah, well, that's kind of the way I look at it too. Like my channel, I don't qualify yet for monetization because of the new rules behind YouTube. You have to have the 4,000 watch time hours and 1,000 subs.
Oh yeah.
So I've gotten over the 1,000 subs, but I haven't quite hit that 4,000 watch time threshold.
Oh yeah.
But even still, like I know, like the money you make off of YouTube is very little.
Oh
and
yeah.
So but I mean that little bit is something that I could actually take and reinvest it into the channel and not worry about, you know, well, I'm dipping into more money to keep the channel going. So it would be cool to make a little bit of money. And I understand that you just would not, it's just not feasible. Like not in my lifestyle that I still would have to keep my full-time job and do this on the side. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, I've been doing this for 2 years and I haven't made anything. I mean, I have like a Patreon where I've made a little bit, but I mean, that's, you know, in 2 years, it's compared to like
my best advice is to just keep doing it. Cause it's like, I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I feel like to make like a professional wrestling analogy, like I feel like Diamond Dallas Page, you know, it's like, it's a wrestler that really didn't like hit his mark in the industry until he was like in his late 30s. And like, he just bounced around and stuff and didn't really like know what he was doing. And like, for me, I always had like this idea of what I wanted to do. And I was doing some great things while I was at NBC and at Review Fix, but it's just like the last year or two, everything just like kind of came together, you know? And a lot of that I owe to my wife and to my daughter because I don't have the time that I had before, you know? So it's like, if I have an hour after my daughter goes to bed, I have to make it count. You know? So
that's always the tricky part. I'm in the same boat. I find that little bit of time in between getting home from work and, you know, maybe my wife and my daughter come home in an hour.
Yeah.
And so that's an hour of time for me to start filming a video or They might do something at night where they go out and do things, and that's another hour I can run downstairs to my man cave and put the camera up. And then the rest of the time I'm upstairs editing or whatever, and I'm trying to run back and forth so I don't look like I'm completely abandoning them. Because I don't want to ever do that. I don't want to be that kind of guy that just, runs downstairs, gobbles his dinner, and then runs back upstairs, and they never see me, right? So that's really where that, and you have to also have understanding. Like I know your wife's really understanding. I've seen a lot of her posts. I've seen you guys joke around a lot. You guys are, you make a great connection.
You have to, because it's like, you know what it is? My wife runs her own jewelry business. And if you want, I'll give you guys the link at the end so you guys could check out her work. But it's just like, she busts her ass, man. Like she has to take care of my daughter like all day while I'm at work. And then when I come home, like I help her out and stuff. But I mean, like, my daughter is like mommy, mommy, mommy all day, and like I'm the fun guy, and we get to have fun and stuff. But it's just like without my wife, like this whole ship sinks.
Oh yeah.
So it's just like at the end of the day, the entrepreneurial spirit is like alive in the both of us. She's what she's trying to do with her jewelry business is the same thing that I'm trying to do, with like with this book series and now like the video game that I'm working on, and then like the same thing too with the games that I've lent my voice to. Like I'm hungry. I don't have dreams because dreams get accomplished someday, and someday isn't on the calendar, So I have goals, and I have a timeline that I have to get these things done, and I'm not here to like screw around. I'm here to get it done. So
and I've seen her do her. She does like the Facebook.
Yeah, she does
videos
Facebook lives and stuff.
Yeah.
If you go to on Facebook, All That Glam by Melissa Hickey. If you write that in, Melissa Hickey, All That Glam, you'll see her. And she's super bubbly, she's charismatic and stuff like that. But it's the same thing with me. It took me a long time to like ripen and blossom. And when she first started doing it, she was scared to go live. And now she goes live, and it's just like she could be like rah, rah, yelling at me, and then boom, she's live, and she's just like the super charismatic person. I'm just like, I'm so like proud of her. I'm so proud of the person that she's become, So
yeah, I've had those moments too.
A few years ago,
I've had those moments too. I mean, my first live chat was with Sonia, which you know very well who she is, and and I was like, is this gonna work? Am I gonna make a fool of myself? Am I gonna know what to do? And I understand, and it's something you have to grow into. Like even today doing this live chat, it's like I'm worried I'm going to hit a brick wall and be like, duh. So
you will never, ever hit a brick wall while you're speaking to me.
Yeah, I notice you really know what to say. I mean, I've talked to some people where I've asked a question and they answer it like, and then they sit there and I'm like, okay.
Because the thing is too, it's like, because I'm a journalist and I know that like your people listening, you got 13 people listening right now. Thank you very much. To everyone that's listening, but it's like you guys want to hear a story, you want to be entertained. You don't have time to hear like silence and people not knowing what the hell they want to talk about. So like I've done interviews with people before, it was just like silence, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, who wants to listen to this?
Please talk.
Please,
please give more than a single word answer.
That's the thing too. Writing the book, I structure. I tell all the time. We talk to friends, and I'm like, I banged out a chapter today, and they're like, well, you just interviewed that person yesterday. How did you write the chapter already? I'm like, because I have a structure. Like I know, like in the first couple of paragraphs, I really want to sell the game, like sell the legacy of the game. Not say if it's good or bad or not, but like sell the legacy, sell the importance. And then what I want to do is just allow the person to tell their story. And then I'm filling in the gaps with transitions and like facts and things like that. So I've really like been lucky to boil this down to a science that makes it as easy to digest as possible.
Yeah, well, that's how it works. So you mentioned just before we started that you might have some information about a new game or something you're working on.
So my De Niro over here, I got some some information. If you want to hear some information, I heard things. So anyway, what happened was I was lucky enough to do a interview with Pete Paquette about a year and a half ago, and he has this great podcast called like Just Another 5 Minutes. And Pete has worked in the video game industry for quite some time. And at the end of the podcast, he says to me, he's like, if you ever want to work in the video game industry, like if you want to get started, like let me know. And I'm like, I'm letting you know. So Pete basically invited me to be a part of this game that he was creating with his brother Jeff, who's on here. And Jeff, I bust Jeff's balls a lot. I bust his chops about everything. But he is like one of the most talented engineers I've ever come across. And I've interviewed a ton of talented engineers. And we're putting together like this super sexy retro like adventure shooter called Kroom right now. And the Kroom stands for Kinetic Robotic Obedient Obliteration Machine. And this robot that is just like ass kicking balls to the wall. And it's got this really cool sci-fi story. It's got like elements of like Zelda, Kari Warriors, Blaster Master in it. Jeff has also written, just a few more minutes, not just 5 more minutes, I'm sorry. Jeff has also written the music to this game, and the music is freaking awesome. So the thing is, for me, having interviewed all of these developers, a game has to have like 3 things. It has to play well, it's got to have a cool story that connects you, and it's got to have great music. Because every game that I remember loving has a great score. So I'm the type of person that in the morning, when I'm on my way to work and I got my Spotify thing going on, if the theme for Final Fantasy VII comes on, I just like kind of have to stop. It's like listening to like Africa by Toto. Like the world just stops, you know?
Yeah.
And like Jeff sends me tunes from this game, and I'm just like, oh my God, he's got it. Like he's totally freaking got it. So it's got a story written by yours truly. That's really cool with input from Jeff and Pete. And then Pete is an amazing animator. He's worked on Rio, Horton Hears a Who, Overwatch, Madden 18, Bioshock Infinite. So he's the animator. Amazing, super talented. And Jeff is amazingly talented, and he's the guy that's like building this world. So like to be able to work with these guys, the name of their indie game company is Orange Door Studios. To be able to work with these guys on a game is like a dream come true. So it's like I've done voice acting for games like The Padre and Relentless Rex before, and those have been a ton of fun, and I've learned a lot, but this is like the first game that I'm working with these guys from the ground up, and we're still like just getting started, but we'll be at the New York Nerd Show on April 6th in Staten Island, and we're going to show the first level of the game and answer questions for people. So if you're in the Staten Island area on April 6th, you can come by, you can meet me, you can meet Pete, you can meet Jeff, and we'll talk about that. There's going to be 2 panels. One's going to be on the game and working in the video game industry, and the other one is going to be on video game books, and I'm going to be doing a panel with Leonard Herman. And Leonard Herman's going to be there selling copies of his books. I'm going to have copies of my books, some goodies. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But like,
sounds like it's going to be a great time.
Back to the game, though, man. I mean, it's super hard when you're developing a game. I can't believe I just said that. Oh my God, when you're developing a game. Oh my God. But to stay objective, you know? And so many of the developers that I've spoken to over the years have said, like, when somebody came in and they said, oh, this game isn't as good as you think it is. You need to fix this. You need to fix that. It kind of like it struck me like because like Michael Menheim, Mutant League Football, he was like when Sam Nelson came involved, he really helped refine Mutant League Football. So like as far as Kroom goes, it's like Jeff is super critical, you know, of his work. He's a perfectionist. Pete is super critical of his work. You know, I think everything that I do is fantastic. Like the first time, you know, I'm only kidding, but like to have 3 people that type of creative synergy, you know. It says a lot. The game's going to be really good. Like I'm super confident in it. Like I was doing voiceover today for the main character, and the first time I did it, I thought that it was okay. My daughter was napping at the time, and Jeff was like, "Oh, well, why don't you try this or why don't you try that?" And I'm like, "Shit, my daughter's sleeping. When I might have to do it tomorrow." Blah blah blah. And then it was just eating at me. Like I'm like, I have to get this done. Da 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 da. So I went back into my my man cave, and I recorded the other lines, and then to get that back from Jeff, like, oh, they're good now, blah, 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 blah. That's what I'm talking about. Like, so there's a really unique creative synergy between the 3 of us, and if you like retro old school games, you're going to love this game. It's got a great soundtrack, it's got a great story, and it does a lot of things that retro games wish that they could do back in the day. So I'm super excited for it.
Is there like plans of what this would be released on? Is this like
it's a little bit too early to announce any of those things.
Yeah.
But it's actively in development as we speak. Pete and Jeff are actually in the chat right now, so like you can definitely ask them questions too if you're interested. But yeah, it's actively in development. We're polishing as we speak. So super fun exploration adventure shooter. Just a lot of fun.
Stu's Reviews is asking where did you say you were speaking with Leonard Herman?
Yeah, the Nerd Show, the New York Nerd Show. If you go on Facebook and you write in like New York Nerd, it comes right up. So it's in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to be doing 2 panels there. One panel with Pete on like working in the video game industry, where I'm just going to talk about like my voice acting for like 5 minutes, and then let Pete talk, because Pete's the one that has like really cool stories. Nobody wants to hear about me being in a couple of indie games. They want to hear about Pete, like Overwatch, League of Legends, Madden 18. They want to hear that stuff. So I'm going to just like, I'm going to tell people like, oh, this is how I got started, and then just like go like, boom, Pete, go do your thing. And then the video game book one too is like, Leonard Herman's a legend. So like the both of us are just going to talk about how we got involved in video game books and why they matter and why you should care. So
cool.
Yeah,
sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think we should probably wrap this up, because we've been on now for about 70 minutes.
Why, Brian? Like, look! Hold on. We could shut the light off, and like, and we could have like a little sleepover. Like, we could just keep talking. We could
just keep the stream going all night long and just stay up. And that's the problem with doing it on a Wednesday. I got to get up for work tomorrow. I'm sure you probably have to get up and do stuff. And
oh yeah.
Although you said you don't sleep, so I guess you're
up at like 4:45. Like
you're more.
And I want to NXT. I have to write up NXT coverage for Review Fix. So always busy.
Okay, so I want to thank you for coming on the show again. This was awesome having you back. You're the first one of 2019 for me, and I hopefully can do some more chats later on. I remember at one point I was even talking with both you and Sonia and trying to do like the 3 of us doing a chat together.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done that before, so that might be interesting. And
yeah,
I'm sure
day.
she would still be up for that.
She's great too. It's so funny because like right before the podcast was supposed to begin, she emailed me and she's doing some PR work for a singer. So I just interviewed like one of her clients like right before the show started. So super funny. So
yeah, and thanks everybody for coming into the chat too. It was always great. This is the part I like about doing it live is to be able to communicate with the people in the chat, and have them ask questions and just kind of be interactive. And I know it's tough when we're talking and stuff. We might miss stuff, but after the video is done, it will be on YouTube, and there will be a comment section below. So feel free to throw some stuff down there, and I'll check it out. And if Patrick has time, he'll come and check them out too. Or maybe if it's a big question, I can throw it over to him on Facebook. Sure. Again, I'm going to have all the links. I'm going to get Patrick to send me whatever links he can to his book, to his Facebook page, to his wife Melissa's Facebook page as well for her jewelry. All the kind of fun stuff. We'll throw it all down there. And look, Green Lantern just made it at the very end of the chat.
Love that guy. That guy's awesome.
He always likes to come in at the very end. And, but anyways, yeah, thanks everybody for coming in, and I hope everybody got their question across. Or
just really quick too, before we go, if I could just throw out a couple of more things. Is that okay? Yeah,
throw it out there.
So I have a Facebook page for the book. It's The Minds Behind the Games. So if you go on Facebook and you search it up, we throw questions on there every day, like what are you playing right now? What's the game in your collection you're most ashamed of? Like just stupid stuff. I make memes for the book like all the time. I have a lot of silly, fun on the page. Also, like I said too, you can go to patrickhickeyjr.com and learn more about me and the voice acting that I'm doing in the book. And there's a little tab on there that says The Minds Behind the Games. You can buy the book straight from there. And if you buy the book straight from there, you will get your copy of the book autographed. So if you buy from Amazon, that's great, but you won't get it autographed because I won't get that order. So if you make the order through my site, then it's like I personally send you the book. Also, too, go to reviewfix.com for all your pop culture, needs, comic books, wrestling, video games, the whole 9 yards. Also, too, like I said, Orange Door Studios, look them up on Twitter, look them up on Facebook. 2 great guys living their dream, making video games. Kroom is going to be awesome. There's a whole bunch of things that these guys have planned. I have the utmost amount of faith in their professionalism, attention to detail, and passion for video games. It's like 2 lifelong gamers that are super talented making games. These are the type of games that like you want to play. Again, last thing, New York Nerd Show. Check it out. I'm going to be there April 6th. I would love to meet all of you guys, shake some hands, give some hugs. My wife's going to be there selling her jewelry too, so that's the thing. You guys can go. Bring your girlfriend, bring your wife, bring your kids, and if they're bored with all like the nerdy stuff that we talk about, my wife sells like jewelry, so you can get them something. So like,
I've seen some of her stuff.
Yeah, there's something for everybody. So again, feel free, all of you guys, to sub me on YouTube, Review Fix, or you can friend me on Facebook, Patrick Hickey Jr. I'm also Google verified, so check me out, and I hope to continue the conversation. If you listen today and you have a question for me, just come and message me, and we'll start talking.
Stu's reviews would rather get hugs from your wife instead.
Fantastic, Stu. Very nice. I would rather have a hug from my wife too.
Yeah.
No, we put your jewelry. No, no.
Hey, oh, that's cool. Anyways, yeah, like I said, all these links.
She doesn't want to come on though. She's shy for like the first time in like years. So she's actually working on her jewelry stuff right now. So
oh well.
So yeah,
like I said, we'll have all these links on there, as many as I can throw in there on the thing, and and if you have questions, like I said as well, throw them down there, and
awesome.
Yeah, and
I just friended Stu on Facebook. Look at this.
Yeah,
there you go. See, this is what happens. This is how we grow as as people. This is what it's all about: sharing ideas, learning from each other, sharing the passion. That's what it's supposed to be about. So that's the hope for these books. So
don't forget to sub the YouTubes and
sub Brian's YouTube. If you're listening, if you're like one of my friends that just came by to listen to like this interview, like you need to sub Brian. Like sub Brian, okay? Or you're gonna get this.
I got a lot of great stuff out there on classic video games. I do a lot of gameplays and stuff like that. So if you're into that stuff, you're into the old retro stuff, check out my stuff. You can even go back and check out our first chat, which was really fun, where we talked for, I don't know, how long we talked, like an hour and a half.
Yeah, that was, oh my God, I remember I just put like my daughter to bed.
Yeah, I remember.
That was crazy. That was a while.
Like, what are we going to be like 40 minutes, half an hour? And I'm like, oh.
It was like an hour and a half.
They go over that. And, but yeah, it was that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, yeah, I think we should wrap it up now. But thanks everybody for coming into the chat and for the 12 to 16 people we've had watching. I don't know. People are coming and going, I'm sure. Oh, geez, Sonia just popped in there in the chat.
This is like the podcast that will never end. Like,
yeah, I don't know if she just popped in now or if she's been watching this whole time and hasn't said a word, but yeah, Sonia is right there in the chat. Awesome person. We were just talking about you because we were saying, how it'd be cool to one day do the three of us doing a full-on chat together. That'd be awesome. Watch the whole time. Sorry. Okay, so she's been there. She's just kind of ghosting us.
There you go. Wow, so Stu unsubbed you so he could sub you again. So Stu's a good guy. So maybe Stu, this is the thing. I won't let you hug my wife when you see her on the 6th, but I'll hug her in front of you so you can live vicariously through my hug, if that makes sense, if that's okay.
You can also do a virtual hug if you want.
Sure.
Those are fine.
That's fine.
Anyways, like I said, we're going to wrap this up for real this time. And thanks everybody for coming in, and like always, I have more videos coming on my channel. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to be launching my classic PlayStation games, classic arcade on PlayStation. So it's going to be the Frogger game. So that video, look out for that. That's coming out tomorrow. and I'm going to keep up on doing what I'm doing. And thanks again, Patrick, for coming in.
Yeah, no problem, man. Happy to be on board.
All right. See everybody later.